It's me, Sony. Before I start today's video, I want to say the disclaimer straight away. The following is not an active project. It's literally just me messing around with a bunch of assets and a bunch of things. It's entirely made for this video and this video alone. So it's not an active thing or anything like that. Before anybody asks, do not ask about the assets. You can't have them because they're not mine. Don't ask for the code because it is mine. So there you go. It's all been said. Now, without further ado, what you're looking at in front of you is Super Mario 64. Except anybody who knows Super Mario 64 knows that's not strictly true and there's something awkward about it. What I've been doing is trying to rebuild the exact look of Super Mario 64. So what you're seeing in front of you is the original assets, except based on my last video, this is actually my control system that I built for the remaster that I did, well, reimagining that I did in the last video. So you can see here, if I punch, obviously, clearly not the original game. I did make some changes to the actual system, which is like the long jump and stuff, but other than that, you'll notice that the game does look pretty close to the original, and I tried to sort of replicate the graphics exactly, so I'm using vertex color shaders and all of that. I haven't got the shadows in from this, from the castle structure here. You'll notice there's no handles on these doors, simply because I can't go through, can't go into them. But it does look very much like Mario 64. Even the character model, he looks like he's in Mario 64. Everything feels like it's Mario 64, except you can clearly tell it's not Mario 64. And I made a few changes to the actual system. This was just me, like I said, just testing how closely it looks to the original game. It should look so close that you can barely tell it isn't the original game, and that it's entirely made by me. So obviously the climbing is completely different in this, but aside from that, you know, you can tell by the long jump that I've made a few changes to the actual code of the long jump as well, so it now feels like an actual long jump, but still doesn't work exactly like the original game. And you can tell here when I jump, woo, I landed here on this white bit here, and of course if I do a long jump, I go a little bit further. Of course I've used the coins from the Mario 64 DS version, along with a few of the textures. This is actually the castle structure from the TS version, so you can tell by the top of the castle that it's a little bit different. I've added the flags, they're my own textures, my own flags from the last project. And I've used most of the textures from the original game, except for these things here. Obviously these weren't even in the original game. The flower gardens and everything. The butterflies, original game textures. Like I said, these are all assets ripped straight from the games, so none of this is being released or anything like that. This is entirely just for the sake of the video, and it was just to see how closely my system can replicate the game entirely. You could probably just about notice a little pillar there in the background. That's because I made a tiny modification to the actual build, but before I show you that, let's have a look at the swimming. So I added a little bit of particle effects, the way that the old game does, where you've got this sort of, just sort of little bit of a water ripple coming off you, the way that the old game, the original game actually does. Obviously Mario's swimming animation and everything. This is literally the other rig. This is the Mario Odyssey model rig that I'm using, that I used in the last project, well, in the project itself. But obviously Mario 64's character model being placed on here, and I'm using all the vertex shaders and everything to make it look like Mario 64. But of course you can climb the hill, and you'll notice I made a few changes to the actual hill by adding this little area here which connects over to the castle backyard, courtyard even. I also added those particles here which make the Mario 64 look. And of course I changed the cloud particles to look like Mario 64. And that's just literally for the sake of this video. Like I say, I'm just messing around, seeing whether mine really replicates the game enough that you can't fully tell you're not playing Mario 64 here. So hopefully the physics looks pretty good. You'll notice the jumps are a little bit more floaty, so I changed a few values based on what people were saying. So you've got higher jumps, you've got, well, pretty much every jump's been increased in height. The long jump feels a lot more floaty and a lot more like a long jump. And I've made some changes to the turning on the slide, and that's for a reason. I'll show you in a moment. On the slide physics, so you can see here, obviously, right next to the waterfall, here I am. And that's straight from the backyard there. Let's get on top of the castle and see a few more of the shaders. Again, I'm trying to replicate the graphics exactly. So obviously we have all these remakes and everything. We always try and remake things, and we say, oh, we can make it look better, we can do all these graphical effects. Well, let's try and replicate the original game first. We want to see if we can replicate the graphics as they are, and I'll show you that I'm actually doing a little bit more than what you think I'm doing, where it's just sort of base lighting. It's not just base lighting, believe me, I'm trying to replicate the game's graphics exactly. So yeah, you can see here the stars, they're just spinning objects, they're not thingy. There's a shadow on top of the star when Mario jumps over. That's not supposed to be there, that wouldn't be there in the original game. You can see all the animations do seem to match up, and these are not animations that I animated with this model. The only animation I made with this model is this one, because obviously my idle animation was not like that, it was very different. And that sort of finishes off everything about this build here, except I've added some quick jumps to allow me to jump to the different areas here. And one of those areas is actually down there. So let's have a look over there first, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So you can see there's an invisible wall there, but there's a big black box down there. And what is that? That is this place. As you can see, the music is actually playing. Here you can sort of tell it's not the original game, but you can see something special as well, and you can see the lighting here. So what I've done, I've actually got that sort of shimmer effect from Mario 64, where when you turn the camera, it actually moves the lighting a little bit. It's not exactly flat lighting, because the original game doesn't have exact flat lighting. Anyways, let's see how well the sliding system works. So I increased the smoothness of the sliding a little bit. These are just tiny values that I've changed. I've added one physics material for this type of floor, so this kind of sliding is not exactly possible on grass and stuff, but you can see it does feel like playing the original game. It's almost got the same slide physics, except you can just sort of jump around while you're on it, and you can walk on it as well. And you can see there's that friction change here. Oh, the music's looping. But yeah, here you can see sort of the left side wall is clearly darker than the front wall there, but if I turn the camera, you can see now that wall is darker, and that's just how the original game's lighting works. You'll know that if you play the game, or if you remember the game quite well. Obviously normally there's a box here, but I just sort of didn't bother getting the box model basically. But aside from that, everything I've tried to replicate to the point where it doesn't even, you can't really tell that you're not playing Mario 64. And of course we can prove that we're not playing Mario 64 if we pop out and I go over to my post effects and switch a few things on. So we got, for example, motion blur, and you can see here clearly motion blurring when I move the camera there. If you can look in the background, you can see the motion blur. And of course I can add ambient occlusion, maybe a bit of vignette, and there we go. You've got, you know, clearly not the original game. This is the Unity engine, in fact. And I've got something else which is quite fun to mess around with, and this is just me messing around, testing the engine. So as I said, this is actually built entirely off my last project, which if you haven't seen the video, do check it out, because that's quite a nice build. So I still have the character model from that, and I can just spawn them in here. Boink. And you can see, if they land properly, they're not designed to, you know, interact with another Mario. But you can see this is, on the left and right, are exactly the same model, which is the Mario Odyssey model. And they look pretty damn good in comparison. And you can see they actually all animate. And they all have the different particle effects as well. So you've got the original Mario 64 particle effects here, and those are ripped from the game as well, so the particles are from the game. And on the left and right side, these are my custom particles that I made for that system. They all have the fake shadows, because proper shadows, dynamic shadows, don't work on this scene, because obviously the scene itself is not designed like that, because I'm trying to replicate the original game's look. And you can hear that they all make that sound. So what's the point of this guy on the right? The one on the right hand side, I'm just testing a Toon Shader, and it looks quite nice. So if you look on top of Mario's cap here, when he turns right, you can see it's got a real nice Toon Shader to it, in comparison to the more realistic style of Mario Odyssey here on the left hand side. It's got a nice Toon Shader, and this is actually leading to something that I wanted to try out. So I went ahead and did so, and here we are in in the slide. And let's see you guys do a slide with 3 Marios at once. And you have to remember, each of these runs the Mario physics, so they can collide with the walls, they can fall off the level, and I'm basically controlling all 3 Marios at the same time. They can all collect coins as well. And this is essentially multiplayer without another person, so this is sort of lonely multiplayer essentially. Oh no! Oh, they all crashed. Oh well, down we go, carry on. And you can see here, we all got to the end, and you can tell that the particle effects are different for each one. Oof. Each and every one of them crashes into the wall. It's just 3 Marios running about, messing around, and you can see the actual animation differences when you actually jump and stuff. And that leads me to another thing that I did that I forgot to add back in to the first build, which was my slow motion button. So I mentioned this in the video, but I had already disabled it as part of the build, and that's the button here, which allows me to run the game in slow motion. And you can see how all the animations are much more fluid than at first sight. And that's basically what I wanted to show in the last video, but I didn't, simply because I didn't have my button running. I didn't have the debug switched on. So you can tell, if you watch this guy on the left hand side here, obviously handling all the good animations, we'll have a watch at how it all perfectly matches up with the wall jumps. There you go. And you can see, obviously the camera's following 3D 64 Mario, but you can see how the animations all sort of match up quite nicely. And even this, you can see all his facial animation, you can see his cap floating about, and of course the original Mario 64 Mario doesn't have that cap animation. He doesn't have all the facial animation as well, because that's all bone based animation. Let me just reset them so that they're all together. And you can see I am completely controlling each and every one. Obviously the hands as well, so the modern Mario has fingers, which you can tell here when I stop. You can see his fingers are open, whereas obviously 64 Mario doesn't have that. So this is something you'll probably never see again, where you've got 3 Marios of different generations, massively different generations. Well, 2 of them are exactly the same, but they've got different styled rendering on them. All in Mario 64 build, and I tried to make it look as close to the original as possible. And there we go. So that's pretty much the whole video anyway. But what this led me to is wondering, what could I do with the idea of this old style, classic style graphics. So I'm thinking of building something from this using the same character controller, because obviously my Tubby Super Cat game wouldn't be able to use the exact same controls. It wouldn't feel right to have a completely new character using exactly the same controls. It's a bit ridiculous, that. So I wanted to build something out of this, and I might make another sort of smaller game, which is very much just an editable game. I might make a sort of level editor system, which is not Mario. It's not Mario at all, but it uses this character control system with maybe some sort of PlayStation 2 level graphics, and just maybe using this shader. I really like this shader on the right hand side here. So if we turn Mario so that it looks this way, that shader there on the right hand side, and try and get something that looks like that but allows you to build your own levels and play them through, just build your own challenges and stuff like that. I'd love to do something like that and try that out. So yeah, that's something that I might be working on. Maybe you'll see that next, maybe not. I do have some physics stuff that I've been working on since I uploaded the video last as well, and I'll be showing that off as well. So that's the end of this video. Have a look at the Marios running about and all climbing trees and whatnot. And of course each of them can climb trees separately. And yeah, that's that. So that's the end of this video. I am not going to be updating the other project with the changes like the sliding system and the jump heights and everything and the long jump, there's no real point of me updating that. I don't really want to update it at all, because like I said, I want it to be as is, and I'm never updating that. Well, at the very least, I expect to never update that, simply as part of the legalities of it all. It is as is, it's the end product, and that's it. I'm not updating it, I'm not creating a game out of that, and that's something that has to be said. Anyways, that's the end of this video. Thanks very much for watching. Have a look at my next video when that pops up. It's a little bit of physics, and it's actually going to be a little bit shorter than this one even. So thanks again for watching. Goodbye.